Welcome to Under the Fig Tree podcast. In today's episode, hosts Reverend Micah Glenn and Reverend Dr. Ben Haupt sit down with a special guest as they meditate under the fig tree.
What's up? Welcome back to another episode of Under the Fig Tree. I'm going to do it. I'm your host, Reverend Micah Glenn. I'm joined by my highly esteemed co-host, Reverend Dr. Ben Haupt. How are you?
I'm good.
Yeah,
It feels like I've been away for, I don't know, a month.
Yeah, it's good to have you back on the show.
Yeah, right? It has been a bit since I've been on.
Yeah, last week, I flew solo as host with Josh Pfeiffer, a classmate. But we had a good time.
I saw him in the grocery store yesterday, and I thanked him. I was really jazzed that he was on the show.
Yeah, when I was telling him, just because the Pfeiffers won't be here forever, but while they're here, we should probably have him back on.
Yeah,
he's got some interesting things to say, things to talk about. He's Australian. The accent helps, I think, with listenership. But today we're joined by a guest, Dr. Mark Rockenbach. I almost called you Dr. Josh Rockenbach, but that's not your name. How are you?
Give me a new name.
It happens every once in a while for all of us, right?
Right. Oh, I'm doing good.
You're about to say something.
We
both breathed in at the same time.
I was just going to comment on Micah's stocking cap because he's fashionable. He's looking fashionable today. It goes with the flannel and the sneakers, which I always have to comment on. Everybody knows that.
But people have seen them before, or at least you have.
Have our listeners seen?
Well, I don't know if the listeners have seen them.
This seems like a fairly new pair or newish.
You've seen them.
Yeah,
they're not as new as you think they are. But I just keep my shoes like rotating. Right? To keep everybody off guard.
I never could have pulled off high tops with the tongue out. I am not cool enough to do that.
Try someday. I'll let you borrow a pair, walk around, see how you feel, see what people say.
My wife wouldn't let me out of the house.
So you just gotta let her go to
Dale,
work.
do you have a picture of these high tops that Mike has got on? All right, good. We always have to do that.
You know what? If you want to be cool, become a pastor. Message to the kids.
Have my same brown shoes on that I wear every week and boring socks. So
Ben does this at the opening of every episode.
Yeah. I know. Our listeners are like, okay, Haupt, get on with it. So, Dr. Rockenbach, it is so good to have you on the show, and we especially want to talk today about the Doctorate of Ministry program. So we know that many of our listeners or viewers are actually graduates from Concordia Seminary, and maybe there's some prospective students who have never been here who who just love education and think, man, I'll just do the MDiv and then I'll stay for right afterwards start working on a Doctorate of Ministry. So I think our listeners and viewers will be interested in this topic. We want to talk about the Doctor of Ministry degree. So can you give us a little overview of what that degree is, and then we'll come back and we'll ask a little bit about your personal journey and get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So, first of all, the Doctor of Ministry degree, you can't start right away after you have your Master of Divinity degree. You have to have 3 years experience in ministry before you can actually have the degree. So it's a degree that's very much connected to a ministry. So that's the other requirement. So you have to be in ministry doing something before you can be part of the program. Okay. But it's definitely a degree that is designed for pastors who are doing ministry, who then want to do more education, learn more about how to address specifically ministry-related issues or problems. And so we give them a framework by which they can do that, and then they get to actually do it. So the final project they do is called the Major Applied Project, and they're going to identify a problem in their ministry. We're going to teach them how a framework by which to attend to that problem, and then they're going to write about that. So that's the major end product of it after they take all the coursework.
Yeah, so there's all these continuing education opportunities. Every profession has ways to continue to grow and learn after you go to school and you kind of learn your initial knowledge to get started. I remember as a pastor getting 3 or 4 or 5 years out into ministry and thinking, well, I know the basics,
right?
But now all of a sudden I'm thinking, what am I trying to do in my sermons? Or what exactly am I trying to accomplish in Bible study? And all of a sudden I had these like, man, I'm kind of rethinking all this stuff again. And the doctor of ministry kind of steps right into that kind of a moment and says, here's an opportunity to really do further work in ministry.
Right. Well, and then you have the opportunity of professors who are going to help speak into that. Mm-hmm. You get to see the latest stuff that's being said about something like Haupt or pastoral care or whatever it is. And it's, if you don't set aside time to do it, you're just never going to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what the degree does is it says, okay, now you're going to set aside this time and you're going to actually learn about these things more. Because, there's a difference in sitting in a classroom than actually being in ministry. So now you're actually in ministry, you need some more help. This definitely is a way that can speak into that in a very grand way, I think.
And I get questions all the time. People email me, they're thinking about graduate school and they're thinking about direction. And usually they'll be like, this is kind of what I'm thinking. I'm like, well, I'm not quite the guy to help you decide that what you're looking for is better in a D.Min or a PhD program. But I usually speak to it this way, and then you can correct me if I'm wrong or say more to it. I say, well, think of a PhD degree as academic, and so it's very classroom focused. You're going to find a topic that you like, and then you're going to research it in a very academic way. You're going to read a ton of books. You're going to do all that type of stuff, and then you're going to write your dissertation. And then it's again, I hate to continue to say the word academic, but you're in that academic sphere, and it's not to say that the D.Min program doesn't have academia to it, because you're going to have to read, you're going to have to write, you're going to have to study. If you've done an MDiv, which is a practical master's degree, you understand that we also take a very academic approach to it. But there's that extra practical, no matter which direction you go, there's a practical aspect to it. So I tell people to think about it like this: PhD, academics, nerds reading their books, as where the D.Min is like the equivalent in like a medical field is like the doctor or a surgeon. You're learning how to do ministry better. So again, it's not that doctors aren't academic, they don't learn stuff, but it's for a very specific purpose to do something tangibly in the world. Not to say that the PhDs and academics don't. We write books, and it might help somebody do something practical in the world, but it's not necessarily our goal to do it ourselves. Is that kind of accurate?
Yeah, so every profession has what I would call more of a theoretical degree and a practical degree. Yep. They're both academic. It's just that they take a different approach to it. So like when I wanted to get my doctorate degree, I had to make a decision if I wanted to get a PhD in psychology or what they call a PsyD.
Right.
So the PhD is usually for people who want to be like professors, educators, that kind of a thing, or like they want to write a lot of books or do research. The PsyD, if I would have chose that would have put me on a route to be more like a psychiatrist or a psychologist,
right,
which is more practical in nature, right? Mm-hmm. So every profession has this, and so we have this here at the seminary too. So if you're interested in, like, you want to do a lot of writing, or you want to be a professor someday at an institution, PhD is probably the better route for you because it'll be more theoretical in nature. But the practical degree is the Doctor of Ministry degree. And what you get to do with that is you're actually going to have to put what you're learning into practice. Mm-hmm. Now, it's nothing against the PhD people, but they never really have to put it into practice. No. I mean, they just theorize.
When I was doing my PhD, I wanted to like have a chapter where I talked about what in the world does any of this actually mean for day-to-day life, and my professor's like, that doesn't belong in a dissertation.
Not for a PhD.
There's no place for that here. Yep. So
yeah. But see, D.Min allows for that.
Yeah.
In fact, we required it. So you have to actually. So if you have an idea, whatever your idea is, that's great. You're going to research it. You're going to do the academic stuff. But in addition to that, now you got to find a way to put it into practice in your ministry, and then you're going to test it. And you'll test it through qualitative or quantitative research to see whether or not your idea actually flies and actually works.
Right.
So, I suppose in the PhD program, there is the added stuff where you got languages you got to take, extra languages. Well, in Doctor of Ministry, the language you're really going to learn is research.
Right. Yeah.
How do you do qualitative and quantitative research and do it well? And I think if you learn how to do that well, then you'll be able to do even more of that outside the degree, you see, and test all kinds of things that you want to try for ministry. And you'll find some things work and some things don't work.
Yeah.
But the theorizing is I think the major difference between the two. But I think they're both academic degrees.
Yeah, and in some ways, I think they both they're both good at developing writers, because our D.Min students, they're effectively writing a book that's very much based on the research that they do, and some of our D.Min students do go on to publish that
Yes.
That book, because it's a rigorous process that they're given. They take all of our theology and then apply it to a certain case. So the way I think of it is they're just writing for maybe different audiences. So where a D.Min student, I think, is writing for pastors, church workers, lay people in congregational settings where other people are in the practice and they want guidance in the practice. PhD students are writing primarily for their professor and their committee, and maybe they'll eventually publish their dissertation into a book, but also most PhD dissertations are not very fun to read,
Right,
because even for fellow academics, they're so deep down in the weeds, and they're working on such a micro project that, not to diss the PhD program, but I think they both, D.Min project and a PhD project, would take a lot more work to publish it as a book, and get people to read it. But I think they both train writers.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. And I always, because I spend a lot more time with the Doctor of Ministry students than I do with PhD world, just because I'm the director of that. But I always tell the students, you got to write your way out of this.
All right.
Yeah.
So you have to write. Now, for pastors, that scares them, a lot of them, because you have to realize pastors aren't doing a lot of writing.
No.
They're doing a lot of preaching. So they're very good at their oral skills, because that's what they do all the time. But if you're not that great at writing, don't worry. That's why we have coursework, and we're going to help you with it. Mm-hmm. So some people will say, well, I don't want to be in the program because I don't think I could do that. I could write it. But that's part of the reason why you get in the program, is because we actually can help you with that writing. And you also get to verbally talk about it too. We have the oral exam you do at the end. We get to talk about it. And then after the degree, once you got the degree, you got your MAP done, your major applied project, usually there's tons of opportunities to go to a conference. Well, we were all talking about the best practice conference. You could go there and you could present your topic.
Yeah.
And many of our graduates find opportunities where they're going to present to other people what they did, and they share that.
Nice.
And then other people benefit from it as well.
Yeah.
Probably not as many people go around doing that in the PhD world, where you go to a conference or something like best practice and talk about your PhD dissertation, but you would do that about your Doctor of Ministry map. You see, that's another difference.
Right. Yeah. I wonder too. I'm thinking about so I was an every Sunday preacher, and I am. I think probably more classically defined as an introvert than an extrovert. So I felt like a lot of times I was depleted from constantly preaching, constantly pouring into other people. Do you find that for some students, working on a doctorate of ministry is almost it's almost restorative personally, because it is pouring back into a person that spends most of their time pouring into others. Do students have that kind of this is almost like a bit of a break from ministry and kind of a chance to be refilled?
Oh yeah, exactly. Because when you're in a class, you have the professor, but you also have these other students that you get to connect with. And you get to hear and see what other people are doing around the country or around the world. So we have people from like Brazil, we have, some students from there, and they just get to see how ministry is happening in other places. Well, that really does fill you up. And especially if you're learning about a particular topic, well, now you can take that learning and take it back to your congregation, and you can share with them things that you learned in the program, and they also benefit from that. So definitely they're being filled up in ways that I think is very beneficial for them and the congregation or the ministry site, wherever they're at. Yeah.
You mentioned people coming from all over the world. So tell us practically just how do the coursework, the classes, how does that actually work for a student? I mean, I'm assuming that I know the answer to this question, but I'm setting it up, that a pastor out in the field is not going to resign his ministry and come to the seminary like he did for an MDiv. How does that work for a pastor?
Yeah, so we're very pro-pastor and ministry. So one of the cool things we've done is all the courses now are online. So you'll take one course a semester, and you might meet, let's say, Monday from like 9 to noon or something like that. It depends on how many credits the course is worth and all that kind of thing, how long you meet. So yeah, you just meet, and then it's just once a week, and then you do your assignments or whatever is needed. And you can teach through Zoom, for example. And most of our professors are flexible enough that, like, for example, if someone has died and the funeral now is scheduled during when class is supposed to be, well, we can record the class session and you can watch it later.
Right.
Yeah. As long as you're not like, you never show up to class, that'd be a problem. But usually we're flexible enough because we know that you're in ministry and we want to respect that. And so all the courses can be done online. You only come to campus twice for 2 seminars, and it's in January. And we start Monday at 1 and we get done Thursday at 4, again, so they can still do Sunday things on the weekend. So we try to be very flexible so that they can get this degree. And yeah, they don't have to sell their house, move here to St. Louis. We try to make it as very accessible to them as possible. And I think moving online helped that out a lot. And since now we have the technology that we can do that kind of thing, it's pretty cool. Not everyone likes online education, I understand that, but it is a way to do it. Mm-hmm. And that's why we do still bring them on campus twice, because we found that also helped. So it's not like you never come to campus. Yeah. So you come twice for these seminars, and then of course we hope you come back for commencement when you graduate.
And there's also opportunities for pastors to come to campus just on their own. We regularly have, I wouldn't say regularly, but I've occasionally have pastors that will come and take a little week mini sabbatical and just go to chapel with us, use the library, get out of their context, and maybe sit in on a couple of classes, have lunch with a professor, coffee with a prof after class or something.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I jumped right in and we skipped over all the things that you usually do at the beginning of the show. So I'm going to kick it back to you.
It's 100% perfect. Just it's one of these things where, like, when guests come on, where people listen, people have been listening. Some people have been listening to us from the very beginning, which
God bless them.
I am very grateful for.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Because people ask about the programming, how we do it, and some people have it's a weird thing for somebody to ask me, like, I'm thinking about starting a podcast. What do I do? And I'm like, what are you asking me for? But yeah, it's very relaxed. We'll get to the meat of we won't forget this question. And so one question we like to ask all of our guests, but especially their first time on the show, because you just never know. Everybody kind of has a very similar story and yet a different story into ministry. And so if you wouldn't mind sharing with us, what was your pathway? What's your story that led to you becoming a pastor?
Well, for some reason, I've always wanted to be a pastor. And I think the reason why is because my temperament is I like to help people. So I'm always interested in helping people, caring for people. It's always been a part of who I am. Well, growing up, the place where I saw that happening was in the church. Sure. So my family took me to church. I saw all the time how the church was helping people in the community or helping each other. And so I thought, well, pastors do that. I like doing that kind of a thing. So that seems right. So I've always been kind of interested in it. And because of that, I had a lot of people who supported that idea and put me in situations so that I could experience what it would be like to care for people in the church. I had my grandmother's pastor. This was like when I was in middle school. He would invite me to come to the nursing home where he would do chapels and things. And I would be there and I'd read the lesson or help him out. Or when we did communion, I kind of assisted him. I just got to experience kind of what that was like. And then I went through public school, but when I got to the 6th grade, there were 4 different classes you could be in. And I ended up in Mrs. Conkling's class. And she also was a Lutheran member of an LCMS church in another town. And she got to know me and know that I wanted to be a pastor. So she says, hey, I have this monthly Bible class I do at this nursing home. She had like 40 to 50. This is a county nursing home, so lots of people. And they would get like 40 to 50 of the residents to come for this Bible class she'd have in the evening. So during recess, I would sit with her inside, and she helped me figure out how to put together a Bible class and let me help her team teach that or do it myself. And that was just amazing. I mean, that was just cool to have those opportunities. So I think it's just always wanted to care for people, found that was a way to do it and went into that. And then just having people give me opportunities to be able to see what it's like to actually be in the church and care for people and do things. So yeah, pastoral ministry is the way to go. I suppose if I was in a different household or something and maybe the medical world was the thing, maybe I'd go in there. Well, of course, I eventually went into counseling, so that's the helping profession as well.
Sure.
But what I can do now is I can connect the theology and the psychology together in a way that maybe others don't or can't or whatever. So just kind of always something I wanted to do. So I grew up on a farm, and I knew what I did not want to do is I did not want to farm, which probably disappointed my father but farming just wasn't my thing.
Sure.
He would have us out there doing all kinds of stuff. And,
Baling hay?
Oh, yes. Oh. I mean, the worst part is when, you bale the hay, and then in the wintertime, you have to feed them, right? So He'd be in the tractor that had a cab on it and heat.
Right.
And we would be out there, opening the gates and making sure the cows didn't get out and freezing to death while he was bringing the bales of hay, in and out of wherever and so, or the word, I've said this before, we had to cut thistles. I don't know if you know anything about cutting thistles, but we had lots of creek area, and if you didn't dig up the thistles and cut them, they would take over and there'd be nothing for the cows to eat.
Right.
So he would take us out there, and one time you use a spade. So he got these spades. I have 2 other brothers, and he engraved our name on the spade. So I have a spade with my name on it.
Dad.
And we went out there, and I hated that. So I knew I didn't want to be a farmer. I didn't want to do that at all. It's kind of interesting how you end up where you end up at, right?
This is so fun. I had no idea that you grew up on a farm. And I would not have guessed that. So I think you found I didn't grow up on a farm, but my uncles were farmers. So I spent a lot of time on the farm and got myself into a fair amount of trouble from time to time.
It's a lot of work. It's hard labor. It's not an easy thing. Well, yeah, tons of farms. The one interesting time, we eventually went to the big round bales, right? But before that, we did the smaller, rectangle bales. Right. So you'd be out there, and you'd have this machine, and it would come on the wagon, and you'd stack it. So I don't know how high we had it stacked up. And then Dad would start driving, and we'd just sit on top. Well, he was driving along, and there was a little raised area, and so it tilted the wagon, and all the bales fell off, and we, of course, went down with it. Oof. Farming can be dangerous as well. It's a dangerous kind of a thing. So, I mean, I love going back to the farm. My kids love going out there because they still live on the farm. It's cool than being in the city. But yeah, I didn't want to be a farmer.
My mom is from St. James. I have uncles and cousins that farm. I like to do it for, well, I say I like to do it. I like to visit the farm for a couple of days.
Yep.
But
that's
then,
good.
Then, yeah, exactly.
Come back to the city.
Ready to go home back to the city. Well, there are a couple of things that I think are incredible because, everybody's story is a little bit different. I remember not that long ago we had Jeff Clater, and he had the 6th gen thing, and he has a whole blog post about it. I was like, oh, that's what that means. But the fact that you, just because of that nature of wanting to help somebody, so there are certain characteristics that really, if you are a certain type of person, becoming a pastor is a very natural, I don't ever want to say easy thing to do, because there are a lot of, even if you like helping people, there's a lot of difficult things about wanting to help people. But just kind of having that in you all the time, but then having the people around you, which is such a critical thing, especially at that age, if that's who you were and you had people who were willing to help pour into that, and then also, most importantly, give you opportunities to see and feel and experience what it's like, at least to some extent in that space. I think that's incredible. We really should do that more with our young people, especially if they haven't quite yet identified that they necessarily haven't vocalized, hey, this is what I want to do, but you're looking at the person and you say, hey, they like this type of stuff. I wonder how they would feel being up here. I wonder how they would feel going to a nursing home and caring for people this way and sharing their faith. I think about my daughter Talitha, who just loves scripture and she loves to teach. And I'm like, we need to find a way for her to be able to teach people, give her the space to teach people about what she believes in God. It's natural, and you just want to pour into it. I think that's remarkable.
She's gonna follow in her mama's footsteps.
I'm pretty sure.
Be a deaconess.
Sometimes she'll say things. She'll be reading a story from her story Bible, and then she'll like relate it, like the way a good theologian would relate it to another story. I'm like, I don't know if I can take credit for this, but I'm gonna take credit for this because she's my daughter. Makes me feel good. Yeah. So I think that's remarkable that you had those people around you helping you discover those talents, probably hone them a little bit, grow, and that it actually blossomed into you becoming a pastor. I think that's remarkable.
So connect the dots between you were a pastor, you got a degree in psychology. I know you worked at a district office for a while, and now you're at the seminary. So tell us that part of the story.
Well, really, all I wanted to be was a pastor. So that was the goal. So when I got a congregation, that was awesome. But I had a lot of people who were coming to me for care, for counseling, and they had issues that were beyond what I knew what to do with them. So I referred them to a local religious counseling agency that was in the area. And I was just so disappointed by what they were doing. It wasn't helping my people because they were suggesting or offering things that were not sometimes maybe even against the things that I was preaching or teaching about. Yeah. So I thought, well, surely I could do this better or something. So I went off and I did night classes and got my Master of Counseling degree. So I did practicum experiences, internships, lots of great experiences with that. And so I did that while I was in the parish and never knew exactly what that would result in outside just being better to serve my people, because that's what I was interested in doing. And once people kind of knew I had that, I had all kinds of them, people showing up at my doorstep with this problem or that problem. And then in the meantime then, the district office in Nebraska is looking for someone to do care for older workers. So I just happened to have the right degree and everything, and so I did that for a period of time where I made visitation on the workers, cared for them, did counseling with them, and I also, the other aspect of my life that's my world is conflict reconciliation. So I would walk in the congregations who are in major conflict and provide the mediation for that and the teaching for that and help them to reconcile whatever was going on. And so spent a lot of time doing that. So in the midst of that, decided to work on PhD in psychology. So I did that while I was at the district office. But never, ever did I ever want to come back here. When we left, because we're not big city people. Sure. So when we left the seminary, it was good being out there in the country, like Nebraska and the like. So out of the blue, get a phone call from the provost at the time, and they were looking for someone because Hartung was retiring, and I said, well, surely they have probably tons of people they're looking at, It's just, but I happened to have. I was coming to St. Louis to do a presentation for the Missouri District. And I said, well, I'm going to be there in a couple weeks. If you want me to stop by the seminary, that's fine. I could stop by. And so they had arranged all these visits and all these meetings and stuff the day I was here. And I was kind of like, we're not coming to St. Louis, or I'm not going to teach at the seminary. I was never on the radar. That was all I ever wanted to do was be a pastor, basically. That was it. Yet I had the opportunity to be at the district office to do that work, do the work that I did with counseling. And I remember after all the visits that I had that they take you through when you go through this process, I called my wife that night, and she says, well, how's it going? And long pause, and I said, I think we might be moving to St. Louis. And never thought that would ever be the case, but so here we are. And so came here, and so I'm doing all kinds of things here at the seminary that I never thought I'd ever be doing. So you just never know. You never know how God's going to use you. You never know where He's going to put you and the opportunities you're going to have to serve, to care for people, or teach people, or to share the gospel with people. And as long as you're open, wait and see. Sometimes we some of the students do this too. I think they restrict themselves too much. I only want to do this kind of ministry. I only want to go to this particular state or city or whatever. But if you're open to it, watch and see where God's going to place you and the opportunities that you'll have. So Wow. So that's how I ended up here. Who knows what's next? I don't know.
That's great advice, though, for all of our listeners, regardless of what walk of life or what station you're in. It's watch and see, wait on the Lord, and see where
you mentioned you had a guest that, what was it, 6 generations?
Yeah, 6th generation pastor.
There's no pastors, and so I always felt that I was an outsider, that I shouldn't be doing this because I don't have that pedigree.
Right.
And no one really in my family ever went off to college either. I mean, that just they were farmers. They didn't do that kind of thing. So sometimes people may say, well, that's not for me. I don't qualify. Not necessarily so. I mean, that it's not a requirement, Just if this feels like something that you're interested in, pursue it and see what God does with it.
Well, I have an uncle who's a pastor, but he's not like a blood relative. He married my mom's sister, and no other pastor other than that. My dad's a pastor now, but he became a pastor after I was ordained.
Yeah.
And so it's not, it might be in the bloodline now, but it certainly wasn't. As opposed to like Dorothy's family, my wife, well, they have a whole, probably 6, 7 gen or something like that in their family. But yeah, the other thing is like location. We were big on that as well. We used to say we didn't want to serve there. We didn't want to serve there. And we've been in some of those places, and I grew up just north of here. So it's like, well, once I'm done with seminary, ready to move from St. Louis, experience a different part of the country. And then as me and Dorothy go on in career and our time together, it's like, well, it could be that we do our entire career in St. Louis. And so,
I think that's a good idea.
It's not a terrible idea. I'm not opposed to it. Just wait and see what God has in store, right? At least for the next several years, we'll be in St. Louis for sure.
I want to ask a kind of a follow-up question.
Okay, because I wanted to ask about counseling and mental health, but I'm gonna let you follow I'm gonna let you ask your question because I feel like mine is deep in the weeds.
Well, it's a good question. I think we might have an opportunity to extend this conversation, but I want to ask a little bit more about the Doctorate of Ministry program, because I think we have a really competitive, frankly, a refreshed and fairly exciting new approach to the program. And just here in the last year, it's really started to grow because of some new curriculum. And so maybe there's some listeners out there that have known for a long time that we have a Doctorate of Ministry program. Could you tell us a little bit about some of the new features? You told us that there's been a move to online, but tell us a little more about the curriculum and anything else that you want our listeners to know about the Doctorate of Ministry program.
Yeah, so when I was asked to be the director, they asked me, you got to review this program, and we expect a revision of it. So we did that, and so now we have this refreshed, definitely program, and so if you were in it, I don't know, 5 or so years ago, it's probably different today than what you may have experienced it. And one of the things is that we actually start helping you think about what you want to work on for your major applied project right away. So we have 5 core courses now, and those core courses are focused upon helping you to figure out how to do research and how to do this major applied project. Mm-hmm. In the past, you really didn't think about the major applied project until the end of your program, and then people struggled, I think, with how to do that. So we have also established a framework by which we do ministry, and we use that framework within the program. So you're going to actually learn a particular practical theological framework to do ministry, and you'll be able to apply that to everything that you do. So the first course you take is going to help you to try to establish kind of what is the problem, what's the research question you want to attend to, and then the next course is going to talk about literature review and writing. How do you do the lit review? How do you write it? And all these courses are lined up for chapters within the major applied project. Mm. So along the way, you're actually kind of writing and doing it within the coursework, which is helpful. And then the third course is our theological course, theological perspective course. So how do you think about your topic theologically? And then the last core course you take is has to do with qualitative and quantitative research. How do you actually do that research design methodology, and put it into practice? And then depending upon what concentration you choose, your other courses will reflect that concentration. So if you want to be in the homiletics concentration, then the other courses you take primarily are HOM courses. Mm-hmm. Or if you're in the leadership missional leadership concentration, that deals with being missional, evangelism, things like that. Let's see, and then we have a general pastor one, which basically isn't a concentration. It's like I just want to choose whatever I want to take, and I don't want to be forced to take certain courses. So basically, they're all electives. Yeah, just except for the core courses. We also have spiritual care concentration, and then if you're in the military and you're serving as a military chaplain, we have a concentration for that. So we have quite a few guys who are in the military, and then they're able to do the Doctor of Ministry program and serve that particular context in a very unique way. Yeah.
That's so good. I think we talk a lot about this practical theological framework, and I think my what I've learned is that the first time people see it, they're kind of like, well, isn't that common sense? But our pastors who have been out in the field and know how complicated ministry is, they come into that class and into this framework, and they say, oh, now I understand why I need a framework, because it's not exactly intuitive.
Yeah.
And this isn't always the way that I approach a problem. I just kind of jump to solution, and I'm not pausing to really think deeply theologically or looking at how does this interact with the wisdom of the other disciplines and first article sorts of learning. So the students that I've talked to, I think we're getting good feedback from our doctorate of ministry students that this is tremendously helpful, because sometimes you get out in the parish and you're trying to figure out what's the right thing to do.
Right.
It's not like being in the seminary where they just tell you where to go and where to be and here's when to show up. The ministry is like, all right, here you go.
Well, and that's what you're taking away from the program, is we're giving you a framework that you can use beyond the program.
Yeah.
So I did my dissertation, but I've never written another dissertation since then. The framework that you're going to learn in the program, you're actually going to take that with you and be able to use it in all kinds of areas of ministry, wherever you go. And so that's one of the greatest advantages, I think, of the program. You're taking something with you. You're not just doing this project here and then you're never going to revisit it again, or it's never going to be helpful for you outside of an academic program.
Well, not even just like that. So I'm in the PhD program, and of course, I think my concentration and my desired direction for dissertation is of the utmost importance, and I'm going to enjoy every minute of researching and writing about it. I already know, but what because I went back and forth before I chose a direction for graduate school. I had been thinking about a D.Min because, well, for different reasons, I was doing different things for the sake of the church, and it was like, well, how can I learn how to do this better? When I worked for Lutheran Hour, they had research and everything else like that, and we had a thing, and I was going around and teaching people ways to connect with their non-Christian neighbors so that they can maybe have an opportunity to talk about their faith. And it's like, well, this is a good beginning point. How can I help LHM push the ball even further? And then I got a call to the seminary. It's not that I don't think or care about those things, but it's just no longer relevant to what I'm doing now. But as I've talked to other guys in the D.Min program, they're doing something along confirmation and catechesis and things like that. It's like, well, everybody's going to teach confirmation someday. And like their context might not be the same, but what this person is doing could benefit everybody, if not a lot of people, if not most people. Will somebody benefit from my PhD? Well, I hope so. Yeah. But my dissertation in particular, like you said, will probably have to be reworked, rewritten, if anybody's going to read it and glean anything from it that way. So I'm always a big fan of hearing what people are doing in their D.Min, because again, it's not theoretical. It's not like, again, this is what the church has been thinking about this particular thing for thousands of years, and here's how I'm nuancing it to write a dissertation. Not, again, that's not how every PhD goes, but I just like the practical, the rubber meeting the road, what we're saying to the people in the pews, how we're training our people, but then how does that also impact directly the people that we're encountering in the world? And such a wonderful thing that we have that to offer the church and for pastors to come and build their skills and contribute in a different way. I think it's incredible. Are we there?
I think we should do some ripe for the picking or leave it on the tree.
I thought you were going to taste that for a second.
Yeah. I walked past some viewers and listeners, if you've been with us for a while, will know that this past fall, Micah and I found figs on campus. We picked them and we took a bite on camera. And I walked past the fig trees on campus the other day. All the fig leaves have fallen, but all the poor little figs are shriveled up and still clinging to the tree. So just the opposite of the fig tree that had leaves but no figs. But all right, I digress. It's time for ripe for the picking. So here's the first one, Dr. Rockenbach. Ripe for the picking or leave it on the tree. Audiobooks. Are you an audiobooks fan?
No.
Leave it on the tree for you.
Yeah, I've tried, because I have to commute into campus, so I've tried it, and I just don't. I have to read with a pen in my hand, so okay. I can write notes, I can circle things, I can't do it. No.
I love audiobooks. Ripe for the picking for me. I do a 30-minute walk every morning because I don't have a commute. So that's a little bit of, I loved my commute time when I was a pastor, and I love audiobooks. I've done both novels and lots of nonfiction, sometimes about Bitcoin, but
I can't. So it's also leave it on the tree for me. It's interesting. I can listen to music. I can listen to podcasts. But especially for like an entertainment or academic purpose, I'll be listening to an audiobook, and I have ADHD, and it'll trigger my ADHD. My mind will wander for 10 minutes, and I'll come back, especially if it's a story I'm unfamiliar with. And it's like, well, what happened? And then you have to stop and rewind and listen to it again. And it's just becomes more of a task than something to enjoy. And then also for academic purposes, even more when I like to mark, I like to make notes, and then if it sparks something and my mind wanders about what the author just wrote, well, I'm still just on the page and I don't have to rewind. Yeah, it's interesting. I've done, like, they have like listening tests. Are you a good listener? And as a pastor, in the moments when I need to listen to somebody, like when you were talking about being an introvert and you're exhausted, when I'm like doing pastoral counseling, like I need a nap afterward because all the effort it takes to listen to a person. Not that I don't want to listen to their problems, but actually listen actively to what they're saying in an intentional way. Hurts. It hurts my brain. And then I have to stop for a moment. But so, yeah, audiobooks, leave it on the tree.
We all know how weird I am, so that's fine.
That's all right.
All right, what you got?
Right for the pick and leave it on the tree. Different direction. Boneless chicken wings.
Yeah, they're good. I'd rather have that than the bone-in.
Really?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. My son enjoys chicken wings, so we go. I don't know what the place is called. He loves going there.
There's some at Buffalo Wild Wings.
Yes, that's
okay.
the place.
Right.
That's his place to go. And yeah. Of course, he can eat like tons of food. I can't eat that much.
Okay.
He eats tons, but yeah, those are good.
I'm going to say leave it on the tree for me. I'm always, there's a couple things that I'm scared of if it's a boneless chicken wing. I'm scared that it might be a chicken nugget, which means this is ground up chicken parts and it really doesn't look like chicken. It almost doesn't taste like chicken. The other thing that I'm always scared of with boneless wings is that they're going to be super dry.
Oh.
There are so many times where I've gotten, go to the grocery store or whatever, and you get the boneless wings, and they're like, they sat for hours, and they just, it's like chewing on leather. So, for me, it's leave it on the tree.
All right. Well, they're right for the picking. First, I love chicken nuggets. I mean, they do taste like chicken. Anyway, and like a boneless chicken wing is really just a cut of chicken breast, and so like,
why do you want to do that to yourself? Put that kind of stuff in your body?
No,
chicken nuggets, man.
It is just chicken. It's just ground up.
No,
I can't with you today, Ben. Anyway, no, just joking. But it's interesting. I do prefer the bone on though. You know, bone adds so much flavor to what you're chewing into. Yeah, whenever somebody's like, I prefer chicken off the bone, I'm like, you're cheating yourself. It's like
unless it's thighs. Thighs will always stay nice and juicy, even if they're off the bone.
Yeah, even if they're off the bone, but depending on how you're cooking them, the bone gives it more flavor, man. Just a little more depth. Something you can't purchase. I love bone and meat.
All right, so ripe for the picking or leave it on the tree. We talked a little bit about farms today. So, vegetable gardening. Are you a gardener?
No, I'm not.
Leave
I
it on
did
the
when
tree.
I was younger, interesting enough. I did 4-H. I had a huge garden, did it all the time, but I just don't have the time for it. That's the issue. Because it's a lot of time. You got to weed it, you got to water it, you got to, and then all these bugs and rabbits that want to eat your stuff. Right. So I love vegetables, but I just don't have time to do it. Yeah.
It was ripe for the picking for me when I was a pastor in North Georgia. That was my therapy. I had an enormous garden, big walk behind tiller, and that was where it was the way to get out of my head. And but the squirrels in St. Louis have just decimated every garden that I tried to grow the first couple of years here, and so I gave up. So here in St. Louis, I'm also a leave it on the tree.
I like the idea of it the same way. I'll leave it on the tree because I like landscaping. Before we moved to the campus, it's interesting. Dorothy, my wife, has a sign that says Dottie's Garden, and she does no help when it comes to flowers and stuff like that. But I do like flowers and stuff like that. And I planted like 60 bulbed flower plants last spring, and I'm pretty sure the squirrels dug up every single bulb. So. Exactly. I don't know if we can win with the squirrels around here. They're very rude. And everybody's like, put paprika down. I'm like, I'm not doing.
Oh, I heard all the tips and tricks.
Exactly.
None of them work.
No, not with these squirrels. They're very rude. Yeah. So we'll all leave gardening on the tree for now. Maybe one day. All right. Right for the picking. Leave it on the tree. Cruises.
I've never been on one, but I'd like to.
Yeah.
I just don't. Yeah, I just never been on one.
Sure.
Yeah, they're ripe for the picking for the Haupt family. We've been on a couple, and we love them. You can always find good food to eat. You can always find something to do. We typically don't even get off the ship when it goes into port.
What?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes some of the places we'll get off, but we're just good with just being on the ship and just enjoying Yeah.
It's a new place, new
beautiful
vibe,
weather.
new smells.
Yeah.
Not even to the beach? Oh, you're not
Sometimes.
at the beach?
Not really a beach guy, so.
I have to get off the ship. Like, it's so claustrophobic.
Yeah.
I've only been on one cruise, so I say I have to get off the ship. But I assume if I ever went on another cruise and I went to an island, I would just get off. I don't have to explore the island, but at least off. But yeah, they're right for me. The one time I went, we want to do it again, and we had been thinking about doing it again. Then COVID hit, and the last place you wanted to be for like the last couple of years was stuck on a ship just in case you got somewhere. And they were like, "Nah, you gotta stay there." But it's nice. It's such a relaxing thing. You put your feet up, you get in the pool, you wake up the next morning, and very often you're in a different place. I think it's very novel.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's right for me too.
Awesome. Well, Dr. Rockenbach, this has been a ton of fun. I think my work with our Doctrine of Ministry students has been very fulfilling because it recharges my love for congregational ministry. And I always learn something in reading the major applied projects. So thanks very much for your work with our Doctorate of Ministry students. And any closing thoughts?
Yeah, we generally like to ask before we close, if you had to give one piece of advice to somebody who was thinking about potentially pursuing church work as a career, what would that one thing be?
Well, I probably connected to what I experienced. Get with a pastor and shadow them for doing visits.
Yeah.
Do something. See if you enjoy doing it. Read lessons in church. Just go to your pastor and say, "Hey, I'm interested in ministry. What are some things I can do to kind of test it out to see if this is something I'm interested in or not?" Teach Vacation Bible School, Sunday school. There's lots of opportunities, and just work with your pastor and see what would work, and have that experience. And either you're going to go, "Oh, I don't think this is right," or "I love this. I can't wait to do more of this." And I think that will help a lot to kind of determine, if ministry is going to be right for you.
Oh, that's good. That's great stuff. I appreciate that. And if you're listening and you're in high school, come to Vocatio. Registration's open, free to attend. Week-long experience on our campus at the end of June. Did my little Vocatio plug, but you should come. It's a great time. Well, Dr. Rockenbach, thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure. I'm sure that as Under the Fig Tree goes on in time and history, we'll have you back on, because I do want to circle back around to mental health and counseling and things like that, and to talk about pastoral counseling versus clinical counseling, but also just kind of the shape of the church and people in general coming out of COVID and things like that. I think it's probably one of those things that we should be paying more and more attention to, especially from the church perspective. But again, thank you for coming on. And if you're listening, and first and foremost, thank you for joining us. If you enjoyed the episode, please like it, share it with other people, so that more and more people can listen to Ben talk about fine wine and my sneakers. But if you know anybody in your congregation or you're close to that you think would be a good church worker, don't just think about it. Make sure to tell them, because you could be the person that gives them that encouragement to begin to pursue this career and find their passion and joy for sharing the gospel with others. As always, thank you for listening, and thank you for joining us under the fig tree. We'll see you next time.